The FBI like kicked in the doors, like guns drawn, like flashbangs. Like, they go in there like they're going in to raid Pablo Escobar, right?
Your dad went to jail when you were growing up for a year. How did you find out?
Well, it was like I was driving into school. It's kind of up because like everybody else knew. It was like front page news, all these newspapers.
And to give this context, really successful businessman. Yeah. And then the newspaper headlines are, and I think this is like the late 80s, he's indicted for like tax and security fraud.
Yeah, I don't know all the charges. It was like, some 13D violations, stock parking. It was like him and Michael Milken, and they were like the guys that were being made an example of. And it was a time where a lot of these companies were undervalued. So you have a company that, to give an example, let's say the company has, $1 billion worth of assets that just, let's say the land, the facility, the products, whatever, it's worth $1 million. Stock on the company is worth $700 million. So, you buy 51% of the company, you have controlling interest, you sell off all the stuff, all the shareholders make money, the stock price goes up and you're buying it, and everybody wins. The only person that loses is the CEO of the company, right? And I mean, some people get fired, but at the end of the day, jobs are recreated because, there's another need for it. And so, people, they kind of like villainize this stuff because these CEOs that were getting fired that, were flying on a private jet to Aspen and then would have a second private jet fly their dog to Aspen because they didn't want them on the same aircraft. They wanted them there, and we're, running these companies very inefficiently and taking huge salaries. And we're also the ones that were donating, to the people in power. Those people made a lot of noise about, this stuff because it was, threatening their life, right? Well, their livelihood, whatever. So, they had a lot of influence, and so they, really pushed for a crackdown on these corporate takeover guys. And so.
And that was what your dad was doing a lot of at
exactly,
the time.
Yeah, that's how he made all of his money. So anyways, the whole thing was there was a big push to, crack down on this stuff, and he got busted, Michael Milken got busted, and there were some other people. And the government, I think they made it was like a $62 million judgment against him, something like that.
So how did you find out he was going to jail?
We were driving into school, and he just, on the way to school, he never drove me to school, so I was like, oh, this is kind of odd. And he just, I'm gonna be going away. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, oh, well, we didn't get this appeal. And the whole time he had been telling me like, I'm not going to jail, because it was, in the newspapers, the kids were asking me, so I'd ask him, and he's like, oh no, definitely not. He was always like this crazy, like eternal optimist. So we're going into school, and he's like, yeah, by the way, I'm going to jail. And I think he put it a little bit more eloquently than that. But anyways, it was.
How'd you take it?
It sucked, man. You got to go to school, and all these kids are making fun of you, and your dad's going to jail. It's like, it was kind of a traumatizing moment.
But you're a kid. How old were you?
Yeah, as a kid, it's like, traumatizing. You're like 8 years old.
Yeah.
Like now, I'd be like, oh, well, you still made $400 million that year. Suck it. But at the time, you're like, oh, my dad's a criminal. It's like, it's horrible.
So later on, give me the play-by-play of the FBI kicking down the door.
Okay, so that was a whole different incident. So you're gonna flash forward now. I'm going through SEAL training, and the instructor pulled me out of training, and he goes, oh, Bilzerian, I hear you're a millionaire, you got all this money, huh, Bilzerian? And and I was like kind of low key at the time, so I was like real curious. She pulls me into the lawyer's office, and basically the deal was my dad had been in they called diesel therapy, so they're shipping him from maximum security prison to maximum security prison all through Florida, so like Miami, and even like up in I think like Alabama. So they're sending him around, and the judge had basically put him in contempt of court for not revealing his offshore assets. And so the judge is basically like,
this is because they had the $62 million judgment against him, and he's
paid a
hell to avoid giving anything to the government.
Nickel of it, I don't think. So they're shipping him around from maximum security prison to maximum security prison for 8 months. He's in these terrible places, and my mom is getting freaked out because they're telling her that they're going to send her to jail too. And it was like my brother and my grandmother, they were at the house, and the FBI kicked in the doors, guns drawn, flashbangs, all this crazy shit. They brother's like 17 and my grandma's like 65, like practically gave her a heart attack, you know, and they're like coming there with machine guns and shit, right? Like, you know, they go in there like they're going into raid Pablo Escobar, right? And it's like my brother and my grandma, and they go in there like take all the files and the computers to like try and, you know, see if he's hiding like offshore assets. And anyways, at the same time, concurrently, I'm going through SEAL training and they pull me out and they basically say like, look, here's the deal. We're sending, you know, your mom's gonna go to jail. You know, your dad's in prison and he's gonna stay there unless you sign over a 30-year trust fund. And for me, I was just like, well, you know, I don't really like care about the money. I'm just like, you know, I didn't want my dad to be in jail.
And so the government knows how much the trust fund's for at like this point and all of that, like the... Yeah, so they wanted a third of mine. So for me, I was like, okay, sure. So I signed it off. My dad was so pissed. He like refused to talk to me for, you know, 6 months or 8 months. He's like, I've been in jail for this whole time. Like, you sign off the thing and, you know, give him this money. And I get it. Like, it hurt his, you know, position of negotiation if they already have, you know, this and, you know, whatever. So I guess I kind of him over. I didn't know, it was like inadvertent, you know, I didn't know any better. You know, you're in jail for 8 months and now they basically extort your son who's, you know, going through training and has got nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? So I like, as I get older, you know, you step back and you look at, you know, situations, you know, through other people's lens, and it makes a lot more sense. And so I guess after like 25 years of the government pursuing that, you know, 60+ million, they just gave up. How was he able to avoid like paying it?
You know, he definitely paid some. There was a settlement for sure, and part of it was he gave up the house in Tampa, and there was money paid and stock and stuff like that. So he settled with them. I don't know the details of all of it.
How do you think it impacted your parents' lives? Like just having to go through all of that?
It ruined it. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, he's been, you know, basically like having to live in St. Kitts and battling with the government for 20-something years, and you know, you're basically fighting a fight that you can't win. And to me, that would be to spend that much time of your life fighting with the government, and, you know, especially considering like what a patriot he was. I mean, he volunteered to go into Vietnam when nobody else wanted to go. He's a Green Beret, was the youngest officer commissioned since the Korean War, 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star for Valor. You know what I mean? Like, the guy was like a war hero, like, you know, fought for his country. And, you know, so for, you know, a person like that to then have to battle with the country that he, you know, fought for and did all that stuff, look, I mean, I get it, you know, it sucks.